recently I spoke at the annual conference for the NCH, the National Council for Hypnotherapists, and I spoke on some subjects that I believe are necessary for raising the standards in the field of hypnotherapy, and some debate ensued online in response to some of the points that I'd made and that I'd written online, and some of which incensed me and compelled me to record this video about being a voice or an echo. So I'm going to explain the point first and kind of create, and then I'll return to my own specifics at the end. Back in 1938, Orson Welles caused a bit of a stir with his realistic radio broadcast of War of the Worlds, which was dramatised and adapted to depict a Martian invasion of the Earth. And updating H.G. Wells's 19th century science fiction novel, War of the Worlds, for national radio, Orson Welles probably did not suspect the ensuing havoc. Sunday evening in the 1930s was prime time in the golden age of radio, and millions of Americans had their radios turned on. And many of them missed the introduction of the play due to a very popular ventriloquist being on another channel. Many of those tuning in late heard the announcer take listeners to the Meridian Room in the Hotel Park Plaza in downtown New York, where you'll be entertained by the music of Ramon Raquello and his orchestra. And the music played, and then the frightening stuff began. An announcer broke in to report that Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory had detected explosions on the planet Mars. And this was followed by another interruption in which listeners were informed that a large meteor had crashed into a farmer's field in Grover's Mills in New Jersey. And soon, one of the announcers was at the crash site describing a Martian emerging from a large metallic cylinder. And he was saying, good heavens, something's wriggling out of the shadow like a grey snake. Now here's another, and here's another one. They look like tentacles to me. I can see the thing's body now. It's large as a bear. It glistens like wet leather. But that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. And he went on, I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent, and the mouth is kind of a V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. And it sounds like something from the Aliens films. But the Martians then mounted walking war machines and fired heat ray weapons at these puny humans gathered around the crash site, and they annihilated a force of 7,000 National Guardsmen. And after being attacked by artillery and bombers, the Martians released a poisonous gas into the air. And soon these Martian cylinders had landed in Chicago and St. Louis. And the radio play was extremely realistic, with Welles employing kind of modern, at the time, sophisticated sound effects, and his actors did this excellent job at portraying terrified announcers and other characters. One announcer reported that widespread panic had broken out in the vicinity of the landing sites, with thousands, desperately trying to flee. And in fact, that was not far from the truth, because thousands and thousands of radio listeners believed that a real Martian invasion was underway. And panic broke out across the country. In the US, in New Jersey, terrified civilians jammed highways seeking to escape these alien marauders. People begged police for gas masks to save them from the toxic gas, and asked electric companies to turn off the power so that the Martians wouldn't see their lights. One woman ran into an Indianapolis church where evening services were being held and yelled, New York has been destroyed, it's the end of the world, go home, prepare to die. It's a major contender for the use of the expression, well, that escalated quickly. And you can go and Google the event and explore the story and read about the accounts of people whose neighbours were banging on their doors, telling them to flee for their lives. And these people had their reality created for them by radio and by the fervour. Many believed that the masses were primed for such, as the current political climate was created by being in between two world wars. And there are other contributing factors for sure. Yet people's reality was created by radio and then further constructed by the response of the masses around them, that the people around them that were responding and reacting with panic. More recently, an episode of Pokemon that's only ever been shown a single time and never rebroadcast created something similar. The episode was entitled Deno Shenshi Porygon, translated Cyber Soldier Porygon. It was the 38th ever episode. And those of you with foil hats may be making some vague conspiracy connection with the Orson Welles event. But I assure you this is a fluke. This episode of Pokemon is famous, nay infamous, for using certain visual effects which supposedly induced photosensitive epileptic seizures in a large number of its Japanese viewing audience. So 685 viewers were admitted to hospital. You can go and read about it online, but in particular, go and track down an article at the website of the Skeptical Inquirer, and you'll see that not all scientists and experts that were consulted believed that mass epileptic seizures really happened, as the media had terrifyingly portrayed it. Many have since explained it as mass hysteria. Many of the Pokemon-induced symptoms that were reported, such as headaches, dizziness, vomiting, are less typical of seizures and more typical of mass hysteria. And conversely, symptoms that are associated with seizures, such as drooling, stiffness, and tongue biting, were not found in the Pokemon victims. Three other symptoms, convulsions, fainting, and nausea, that were common to Pokemon victims are associated with both seizures and mass hysteria. And it's important here, I suppose, to distinguish seizures from epilepsy. A seizure is a symptom of epilepsy, which in turn is a general term, for an underlying tendency of the brain to produce a variety of electrical energy that disrupts brain function. Seizures can be brought about through various ways, a lack of oxygen, brain injury, high fever, and one seizure does not in itself establish epilepsy. There are several types of seizures. Research by Tobimatsu and colleagues found that Pokemon victims that they studied all had generalized tonic-clonic seizures. And I'll make reference to that again in a short while, because the incidence of photosensitive epilepsy is estimated at 1 in 5,000. And such an incidence is 0.02% of the population. And that comes no way near explaining the sheer number of children affected. In some cases, nearly 7% of the viewers. And this is not to say that, some children did not endure seizures, but clearly the vast majority of the children did not. Now, stress frequently plays an important role in cases of mass hysteria. And Japanese youths are under tremendous academic and social pressures to achieve. Japanese schools in particular are known as high stress-generating institutions, and students with low or even mediocre grades have been known to commit suicide. The week the episode aired, many Japanese youths were preparing for high school entrance exams and therefore already under added pressure, and there's some studies that support that. Extraordinary stress by itself cannot and does not trigger epidemic hysteria. Another aspect of Japanese culture, however, may contribute to mass hysteria, the compulsion to conform. Bob Reel in 1996 was a manager at a Boston-based cross-cultural training firm, and he said that one of the most important traits of the Japanese mindset is its collective nature. In Japan, we comes before I, a concept that's taught early on. And unlike Western children who are taught to be independent self-thinkers, Japanese children are educated in a way that stresses interdependence and reliance upon others. Many Japanese habits and customs stem from the desire to maintain the group. That's what he said. And this type of collective social order makes a fertile ground for contagion. There are so many similar examples of these types of events, and I'm just touching on these two big ones, whereby the absolute reality, to the extent of mass panic and real physiological responses of people, has been created by media, by expectations, by attitudes, whereby the consciousness of individuals has been dominated to the point that people are not really thinking or feeling for themselves. They're kind of existing within an echo chamber. And many people, listening to this or watching this video may think, you'd never catch me responding in such hysterical fashion to cartoons or radio broadcasts. But can you be so sure? Are you contributing to what's currently trending on social media platforms? Here in the UK, for example, we have a furore at the moment about Brexit, furore over the current Conservative Party leadership contest. As a result, many of my Facebook and Twitter friends are expressing opinions and thoughts on the matter. And I've publicly shown some disdain for some things that are happening in world politics, but also expressed some disgust with the media's readiness to lap up, certain controversies. Other topics that are trending on social media platforms, like the ending of the Game of Thrones TV series and debates caused by other TV dramas. Who's guilty of murder in the latest edition of the most popular soap operas? Who's getting it on Love Island TV show? People are commenting, are debating, are discussing in reaction to what's happening in the media and on social networks, for example. And it all begs the question, are we thinking for ourselves? And what I wanted to illustrate here is just how much your own stream of awareness, your own levels of consciousness, your own self-awareness, is dictated and created by others, and how capable we all are at having our consciousness consumed by media, by the opinions of peers, and so on. For many, it's not a major problem. But how many of us can claim to be having genuinely individual thoughts and claim to be directing our consciousness independently? Self-regulated fashion, orchestrating our own direction in life each day. If you go and look at the proliferation of memes in your Facebook newsfeed, your Twitter feed, on Instagram for starters, then go and take a look at the types of things that your peers, your colleagues, your friends, your family share on all of these platforms too. And notice parallels, notice patterns, notice your own contributions. Are you really thinking for yourself? And it brings me on to my opening point, what got me incensed just in recent days, that someone online mentioned that instead of the sort of science that I expect the field of hypnotherapy to be more aware of in order to progress, that I was speaking about at this conference. It was suggested by another person that we should get more therapists to record their therapeutic outcomes. Instead, we should do more of that. And, I'm for that. But it has major limitations, and I worry about its accuracy. But because we need more science to understand the mechanisms which make hypnosis and hypnotherapy what it is and make it effective, to isolate variables and to examine our subject robustly. The laboratory is not the same as the clinical environment, but the scientific findings can be used to inform our work and our practices. However, you see, what got me riled was the utter echo chamber that this thread became. As with so many threads discussing hypnosis and hypnotherapy by hypnotherapists who should know better, blindly following and agreeing without engaging much of their own thought, it would seem. And that was one of the main points of my presentation at the conference, was that we need more critical thinking in this field. We need more experimental science and a deeper understanding that that comes with a kind of innovative and leading thought. We don't need people who are incessant echoes, perpetuating lazy thinking. I choose to speak out. I choose to research areas not previously investigated. I choose to pioneer as much as possible, and ultimately to be a voice. And firmly believe that in order to progress this field, we need more voices and less echoes. That's it. My simple point explained in a long way. Do subscribe to this channel. Do go visit my college website for details about my online and classroom-based courses. Go explore my incredible members area that's a heaven for hypnosis geeks. You can get 5 days free. Best wishes. Goodbye for now.